uh, Virgo, stop right there. Whatever you were doing before you clicked on this, whatever tab you were about to switch to, whatever thought was pulling your attention somewhere else entirely, let it go for the next few minutes. Because if something in you moved when you saw this title, if something shifted even slightly in your chest or your stomach or somewhere you cannot quite name, then this is not a coincidence. This is you responding to something that already knows your name. And before we go any further, to everyone who keeps showing up in this space, who leaves comments and shares pieces of what they are living through, who comes back here when things feel heavy or confusing or quietly hopeful, thank you. From somewhere real, you make this matter. And to anyone stepping into this space for the first time today, you chose an interesting moment to arrive. Stay. Let us talk about the walk, not as a failure, not as a mistake that needs to be explained away or justified or apologized for. The walk away happened. You made a choice, or life made it for you, or the combination of circumstances and feeling and timing created a moment where leaving felt like the only honest thing left to do. And you did it. That took something. People underestimate what it costs to walk away from something that still has a hold on you. They think leaving is the easy part. They think if you loved it, you would have stayed, and if you left, it must not have mattered that much. But that is not how it works. Sometimes walking away from something is the hardest thing a person does precisely because it matters so deeply. Because staying would have required a version of yourself you were no longer willing to be. Because something in you chose your own integrity over your own longing, and that is not a small thing. That is actually one of the bravest things. But here you are, not fully gone, not entirely moved on. Here, in this space, pulled by a title that spoke directly to the part of you that has never quite let go of the question of whether the walk was permanent, whether what you left behind is finished or whether it is simply paused, whether the person you walked away from is in fact the one, and whether one day in some form or fashion the distance between you might close again. That question is not weakness. That question is honesty. Raw, inconvenient, quietly persistent honesty about what you actually feel underneath all the reasonable decisions and all the self-protective logic and all the ways you have been trying to build a life that does not hinge on the answer. Own that question. It belongs to you. Now, here is what I want to say about the person you walked away from. Something is happening with them, not something I can trace with certainty, not something I can map out with precise detail, because that is not how this works, and I would not insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. But something in the energy of this situation carries a quality that I keep returning to, a quality of movement, of things that were fixed beginning to shift, of a person who has been sitting with something long enough that sitting with it is no longer enough. They may be arriving at something, a clarity maybe, or a decision, or simply the point where the cost of not saying what needs to be said finally outweighs the cost of saying it. The point where the question of you, the version of you that has likely been present in their life, even in your absence, even in the silence, even in the way certain things remind them of you when they are least expecting it, that question might be getting louder for them rather than quieter. And that movement, whatever shape it takes, it seems to be oriented in your direction. But before you run toward that, before the part of you that has been waiting for exactly this kind of signal takes over and starts making plans, I want to say something that matters more than any of that. You walked away for a reason, maybe several reasons, and those reasons were real. They did not disappear just because time has passed. They did not become less true just because distance has a way of softening the memory of why it was necessary. The things that were hard, the things that were not working, the things that created enough friction or pain or confusion that leaving felt like the only way forward, those things are still part of the story. And any version of coming back together, any version of this connection finding its way to something new has to reckon with those things honestly, not obsessively, not as a way of keeping the door permanently closed, but honestly, with both people willing to look at what happened and say, this is what was real, this is what did not work, this is what would need to be genuinely different for this to be different. Without that honesty, reunion is just repetition. And you deserve more than a more comfortable version of the same pattern. So, what does genuinely different look like? It looks like a person who has done something with the time, not just survived it, not just gotten through it, but actually used it. Actually sat with the hard questions about their own part in what happened. Actually arrived somewhere new in themselves rather than just waiting for circumstances to change so they can pick up where things left off. Growth is visible, not always loudly, but it is visible. It shows up in how someone speaks about what happened between you, in whether they take responsibility or whether they redirect, in whether they are asking what they can bring to this or whether they are focused entirely on getting back what they lost, in whether they make you feel seen and met and valued, or whether the familiar dynamics begin to reassemble themselves before the conversation is even finished. Watch for that, not with suspicion, with discernment. There is a difference between the two, and you know what that difference feels like in your body. Have you been feeling something lately? A pull you cannot entirely explain, a thought about this person that arrives without invitation and stays longer than you expected, a sense that something is not as finished as you told yourself it was. I want to hear about it in the comments, because I think many of you have been carrying this specific kind of unresolved feeling quietly for a long time, and there is something clarifying about putting it into words. Let me speak now to who you have become since the walk, because this is important and I do not want to rush past it. The version of you that walked away had courage. The version of you that has lived in the aftermath of that walk has developed something else, something harder to name but more durable than courage alone. A kind of self-knowledge that only comes from having made a hard choice and then having to live inside the consequences of it. From having chosen yourself or your peace or your truth and then discovering that choosing those things does not immediately feel like freedom, that sometimes it feels like loss, that sometimes the right decision and the painful decision are exactly the same decision. You have been living inside that complexity and it has built something in you, a groundedness, an understanding of your own capacity that you could not have arrived at any other way. You know now, in a way you did not fully know before, that you can survive the loss of something that mattered, that your life continues, that you are not defined by any single connection no matter how significant it feels. That knowledge changes everything about how you might step back towards something, because you would not be stepping back from a place of need. You would be stepping, if you chose to step, from a place of genuine choice, from a place of knowing you are okay either way, from a place where the yes, if there is a yes, comes from fullness rather than from the fear of emptiness. That is a completely different foundation. And here is the thing about foundations: everything built on them reflects their quality. A connection re entered from a place of desperation or loneliness or the simple exhaustion of being without it tends to reconstruct the same architecture as before, because the underlying conditions have not actually changed. But a connection re entered from a place of genuine wholeness, from two people who have both done something real with the time apart, from a mutual willingness to build something that actually serves both of them, rather than just temporarily relieving the ache of separation. That connection might look entirely different from what existed before. Not a return, a beginning, something that uses the history as material rather than as a blueprint. That possibility seems real to me here. Not certain, not guaranteed, but genuinely possible in a way that carries weight. Now let me say something directly to the part of you that is afraid, not the cautious part, the afraid part. The part that has been here before, that has hoped before, that has let itself believe in something before and then had to rebuild after it did not hold. That part has a voice that sounds a lot like wisdom, but is actually closer to self-protection. It says things like, do not go back. You already know how this ends. You left for a reason. Nothing has changed. And some of those things might be worth listening to, but that voice is not the only voice. And it is not always the most accurate one, because it is speaking from the last time, from the version of the situation that existed before, from a set of circumstances that may or may not still apply. The question is not whether you were right to leave, you were, trust that. The question is whether what might be possible now between two people who have both been changed by the distance is the same thing you left, or something genuinely new. Only time and honesty and showing up will answer that. Not the afraid voice, not the hopeful voice either. The clear one, the grounded one, the one that has been getting stronger in you this whole time. Listen to that one. So here is where I want to leave you today. Not with a roadmap, not with a timeline, not with a promise about what is coming, because promises about what is coming are not mine to make and never have been. But with this, you walked away. And the walking away was real, and it was right for what it was. And something in the energy of this moment suggests that the story did not end there, that what exists between you and this person might still be in motion, still finding its shape, still moving towards something that has not fully revealed itself yet. Whether that something is a new beginning or a final closure, I genuinely cannot say. But it does not feel finished. And you, somewhere in yourself, already know that. That is why you are here. Go into your day with your eyes open, with your heart open, not unprotected, open. There is a difference. Unprotected means letting everything in regardless of what it is. Open means being willing to feel what is true and respond to what is real rather than to what you fear or what you hope. Stay in that openness. Stay in your own strength. And whatever finds its way back to you, meet it as the person you are now, not the person who left, not the person who has been waiting, the person who has been becoming quietly and without fanfare exactly who they needed to be for whatever comes next. That person is ready. I will see you in the next one. Bye.